you told me to look into Minnesota and their fraud on visas and their programs. 50% of them are fraudulent, which means that wacko Governor Walz either is an idiot or he did it on purpose. And I think he's both, sir. He brought people in there illegally that never should have been in this country.
Governor Tim Walz isn't getting away with allowing fraud to run rampant anymore, thanks to the Trump administration's new efforts to investigate and expose the state's historic welfare scandal. And hello, everyone. I'm Joey Jones, along with Tomi Lahren, Dr. Nicole Sapphire, and Kevin Cork, and this is the second hour of the big weekend show. DHS Secretary Noem has surged immigration resources into the state, already arresting 12 illegals, including child rapists, gang members, some of which are Somali. And now Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is looking into the monumental welfare fraud that occurred under Tim Walz's watch. Specifically, Bessent wants to know if some of the stolen money by Somali immigrants was diverted to the terrorist organization, get this, Al-Shabaab. Wow. And House Oversight Chairman James Comer says the committee is requesting all documents and communications between the governor and his administration to expose what they knew about the fraud and whether they did anything about it. But while it's Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, they're refusing to accept any blame or responsibility.
This is a president in spiral, doing nothing to make life cheaper for Minnesotans or Americans, and we understand who he's targeting.
Can you shed any light on why the fraud got so out of control in Minnesota?
I just think that a lot of the COVID programs that were set up, they were set up so quickly that a lot of the guardrails did not get created.
Wow. You know, there's spin, and then there's putting the washing machine on high. I mean, what was that? Oh, well, everybody stole money. It's okay.
Yeah. I'm also taken aback at how she's smirking during that segment. It's rather serious, you know, defrauding the American taxpayer, the Minnesota taxpayer, something you might want to have a little bit more of a serious face, or at least pretend. Ilhan Omar. This is one of those things that just bothers me to my very core. And there's a lot of things in politics that we talk about that you can kind of leave on the table when you walk out at night. Not this one. This one haunts me. It bothers me. And to our earlier discussion, Kevin, it's because it's happening probably in many other states. Let's take a look at California. Let's take a look at Michigan. I'm sure there's a lot of this that went around. And it was this COVID money. Yeah, so it's not just Minnesota money. It's federal money. It's your money. It's my money. It's all of our money.
That's right.
That went God knows where for God knows what. And the fact that in Minnesota, they're just tripling down on, well, it's racist if you say anything about it. That's just the easiest, the lowest hanging fruit. Don't look here. If you do, it's racist. I don't think that's going to cut it anymore, though. That might have worked in 2020 when everyone was so afraid of being called a racist that we really just shut down any argument or investigation, just saying it's racist, it's Islamophobic, it's bigoted. Not so much as we sit here in 2025. Nope, we're on to you, and I think we're going to be combing through this with a fine-tooth comb this time around.
Doc, it really is, I guess, revealing when you're asked specifically about fraud that occurred under your watch and your only rebuttal to it, when it's being questioned by everyone, nonpartisan, is to say, well, it's just Donald Trump wanting to look at us.
I mean, to listen to Tim Walz, I mean, first of all, I can't stand listening to that guy. He's just below listening to Kamala Harris. He doesn't know what he's talking about, saying that President Trump is doing nothing to bring prices down. President Trump, the list goes on what he's trying to do. But listen, I want to touch on the fact that we're talking about Medicare and Medicaid fraud and abuse, right? So Medicare and Medicaid are lifelines to millions of Americans. But the harsh reality is they're bleeding billions of dollars every single year in fraud and waste of American tax dollars. Just in 2024 alone, $31 billion were flagged as potentially improper and fraudulent payments. Just in New Jersey, where I live, there's a settlement with Horizon Blue Cross for $100 million because the state said that they improperly overcharged them. So you have these massive health insurance agencies across the country who are potentially overutilizing our tax dollars. But then also, if you look at Minnesota, this isn't just one or two people who are gaming the system. These were well-organized fraudulent rings, and they had the threat of voting power. So you have lobbying dollars from the health insurance agencies, PBMs, and then you have voting power from these big immigrant groups. So, you know, oversight and fraud, this is not partisan. This is what the American people deserve. The federal government needs to take responsibility right now because these are taxpayer dollars. And it's not just taxpayer dollars being wasted. The people who need this money aren't getting it because there's only a finite amount.
Kevin, some may say we dodged a bullet. Perhaps we dodged a shotgun shell because he doesn't know how to load one. But thank God Tim Walz isn't our vice president right now.
It's so funny that you said that. I love that visual. Listen, I want to salute what Tomi said. I think she spoke for a lot of Americans when she said, listen, you can't bully us anymore. We can call out garbage when we see garbage, and no matter how much you want to name call or suggest that we're somehow against Somali Americans or Somalis who've immigrated here legally, that's not the case. Fraud is fraud, regardless of where you come from. You have to be honest about it. And here's something else. Tone matters. Instead of saying, oh, we had some problems, but Trump isn't doing X, Y, Z. That's what Tim Walz does. What he ought to be doing, and this goes back to what Nicole was saying, is he should say, listen, the buck stops with me. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to fix it, and we're going to make sure this doesn't continue to happen. Not on my watch. 80 arrests, 100 arrests, I don't care, is not enough. We're going to run them all behind bars or out of this country. It's got to be that tone that you set, and I don't think they've done it, frankly.
Well, instead of doing anything to fix Minnesota's corruption, Democrats are just throwing a tantrum over these comments from President Trump.
Somalians ripped off that state for billions of dollars, billions. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you, okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. I could say that about other countries, too. We're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country.
Yeah, the Democrats reserved all their harsh rhetoric for President Trump while staying silent about the Somalis who ripped off Minnesota taxpayers.
If there's no other story in Minnesota, the President of the United States called Minnesotans garbage and a hellhole.
The president's obsession with me and the Somali community is really unhealthy. It's creepy.
Calling people garbage, calling them leeches. He's dehumanizing immigrants.
The fact that he's trying to blame them for all our problems is complete BS.
Yeah, the message from Democrats is clear. They're more concerned about the president enforcing the law that Somali migrants broke than they are about Somali migrants breaking it. Walz and Omar even felt comfortable taking pictures with an illegal Somali immigrant who has had a deportation order since 2004 and was previously convicted of welfare fraud. Thankfully, ICE nabbed him earlier this week. All right, Kevin, I'm going to go back to you on this. Listen, Democrats have to do something. They can't just sit here and complain and say, the Maryland dad, he's a good guy. the fraudulent Somali, he's a good guy.
Yeah, they're going to keep trying this tactic, and it worked for a while. Keep this in mind. The whole Maryland dad thing kind of worked in the mainstream press for a while. They really kept going back to the well on that. It didn't work on everybody, and it won't work on everybody this time either. But I would say this. The real problem for Democrats is when you get down to the brass tacks of it all, people don't want to see their money stolen. They don't want to see lawlessness. And that's what happened in 2024 when the overwhelming majority of all swing states and the majority of Americans voted for President Trump. If you want to see the Democrats lose the midterms and lose in 28, keep playing this game. You got to be more serious about what you think the American people want. They want law and order, and they want you to follow the rules. And that includes if you came here as an immigrant legally.
Tomi?
Yeah, the compassion is running dry.
Yeah.
And no amount of Somali food that the mayor, Jacob Fry, eats on camera, or the dumb dances that he does, or the police chief there, Chief Billy Badass, who thinks that he's going to have these illegal immigrants call law enforcement on ICE, by the way. That was his recommendation in a news conference. The compassion has run dry here. There are so many good folks in Minnesota, and I would have to believe, Joey, that there had to be a point in time in this country where even the left of the left, the most Democrat blue as you can get, would be mad as hell that their tax dollars were going to fund fraud, going to fund potentially terrorism. This should not be a partisan issue. But again, to our previous point, they will use this blanket of racism to cover their tracks. Investigate them all. Who was receiving campaign donations from some of these individuals, some of these networks? Let's investigate it.
Follow the money.
Let's see who had some stuff going on that didn't look right. That's why they're panicking. That's why they're freaking out, and they're relying on this racism claim to cover their own apples. Your apples are exposed, Tim.
Doc?
Yeah, so I think there are about 260,000 Somali immigrants in the United States. About a third of them live in Minnesota. That's created a massive voting power in that state. Obviously, that's why certain people have been elected to various offices.
How much would you pay for a vote?
How much would you pay for a vote? But the reality is the majority of those immigrants are legal. And so let's take the president's comments at face value, what he actually meant. When he said, I don't want those Somalis here, he's talking about the Somalis who have now defrauded our government and defrauded American taxpayers. And what he wants to send a message to is not just those people or the Somalian people, the fact that if you are coming here, we want the best of the best, and we want people who are going to be active members of our society and not a drain on our society, especially not fraudulently. And I mean, if you start looking at some of these claims, they were pretending children had autism. They were billing the state for treatments that we weren't sure if they were even getting, if the children even had these things. A lot of these people were just able-bodied adults, and they were saying that they had certain disabilities. And this was all going on under the last administration. Sure, there were a few arrests during that time. But this is serious, and this isn't just in Minnesota. This is across the nation, and this continues to just go back to DOGE. Yes, it was a sledgehammer approach. People didn't like it, but the reality is we are bleeding, we're hemorrhaging money from this country from fraud and abuse, and we have now identified that some of these immigrants are a part of it. And so if you need to crack down on immigration, you need to, because we need the best of the best here.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.